Let's look at some examples of methods so we can see how all of that works and comes together. Here I have a very simple start to a program. We have a public class called method examples. Within my public class, I have a method, and that method's name is main. If I look at the method header, I will notice that it is a public access, so the world has access to my method. It's static, which means I don't have to create a new instance of main in order to use it. Another example of static that we use a lot is math. If you think about math.random, math is a class name, and one of its methods is random. And so since it is a static method, it is declared as a static method, which this one is as well, for example. You can access the math.random method without having to create a new instance. Same idea here. I have this method called getName, and so since this is static, in order to use this from another class somewhere else, I would just simply have to type method examples dot getName and parentheses to run this particular method. So they don't count on creating a new instance or a new object. And we'll look at objects here in the next chapter or two. I also have this scanner input, and here is somewhere there is a method, or excuse me, a class named scanner, but it is not static. And so therefore, in order to use any of scanner's methods like printline, I need to create a new instance of that scanner object. Again, we'll look at this more in detail, but I'm pushing you off the deep end and starting you to see these things based on what we've been working with. So scanner, I've created a new variable input. I've created a new instance of that scanner class, and I'm using input as the variable to hold that instance, that object. And from there, I can, as we've seen before, I'm sending to the console a prompt that's asking what is your name, and then I'm putting that name that they entered into this variable called name and printing it out. So what I'd like to do is let's start off with utilizing this method stub, as it's called. So I've created this stub that's not holding any statements yet, but what I'm going to do is transfer all of this information, all of these statements of code, and I'm going to put them into my getName method. So again, reiterate, this method is void. That means it's not going to return any data back to the main method. It doesn't require any information in order to run, so I don't need to send it any data. Here's an example of sending some data to a method. This is a string literal that's sent into this printline method. But this particular method isn't receiving anything, it's not sending anything back, it's simply going to do something once it's called, and that is get the name from the user and then print it out. So in order to call or invoke that method from my main method, all I need to do is type in getName and parenthesis. Since it's not returning anything, I don't need to put it into a variable, I don't need to do anything else except just call it. And so let's go ahead and debug this, run this through the debugger mode just to watch things happen. In fact, what I'm going to do is put a message after it's done running that method, system.out.println printed your name. Okay, so that way we can watch the order of things work. All right, so I'm going to debug this code, debug this file. And we can see that the very first line is to run that method, to invoke that method. And so I'm going to find my little icons up here, and I'm going to choose the one that says step into. So it says run the very next line you normally would execute. And so the very next line then, in fact, is going into this method and running this instance, creating this instance. And let's watch what happens. So I'm going to step into from here. You're going to see code that I didn't write. Here's that scanner class that I'm being asked, that I'm utilizing. I don't really want to walk through all of this code, but I just wanted you to see that it's public and it's not static, so I had to create a new instance of it. and therefore things are being done that I really don't want to walk through or have to understand. That's that black box encapsulation theory we talked about in the PowerPoint prior to this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to step, let's see, this one, it will pop up there, just step over, which means just go through this and go to where I just came from, which was here. So now this just ran, and it created a new instance of a scanner class for me. A new object just got made for me. Okay, and then we are going to step through the code again. System out print line. Again, I don't want to go through this method. You could if you wanted to see it. So I'm going to continue on. Okay, next line it should run will be to get my name. Again, I don't want to walk through all of this code, but you got to start to see the idea. Okay, let's see, I can actually choose this next one, which says step out of this code. Okay, now notice that this all has gone gray. It's like, what's happening? I can't go anywhere. It's broken now. Well, no, not really, because in my output screen, if you notice, it's waiting for me to type in the name. Oops, which is not there. I typed it in the wrong place. Type it there, Kirsten, and then hit enter, and the next line should run. And I should then be able to step through, in fact, next lines. Again, I don't want to walk through all of the print line methods, so I'm going to exit out of that. I'm going to continue to hit this step over, and then last, I'm going to hit the run just to finish this off, but then it should printed your name. So you see that things actually in work, then hopefully these words start to have meaning to you. All right, well, let's do this. Why don't we have this get name, and let's do this. Let's create another method, static. This time I'm going to return a string, and I'm going to print the name. So let's do this. Now I want to receive the information. So I'm going to set up a string data type, and I want to receive a user's name. Okay? Let me just set this up and then we'll talk about it. Okay, so now I've set up a parameter. In other words, I've said I want to receive some information this time, and it's going to be, let's see, we'll keep this void the way we did before, just to kind of build on it slowly. So I want to receive a username, a string, has to be a string that I'm sending it. I want to receive a username, and then now that I have that variable here in this method, I can use that variable within this method. Once I've left this method, like if I came back up to the main, I no longer have access to username. The scope of username is it's only available to me while I'm in the method. So I'm going to receive, let's see, let's do this. Where are we getting our name? We're getting our name from here. So what we could do is we can call, let's see, now that we know a name, we're in this method, we can call the print name, but we have to send it something, don't we? We have to send it a string. Well, it just so happens I have a string here that I want to use, and we'll call print name. So now we're going to use this method to get the user's name, and then we can use, we're making a call to another method that's printing out the user's name. We're sending it data, and we're printing out that data and not returning anything. So once the username is printed, it'll return back here, which will then return back to the main. Okay, so I'm not going to debug it. We're just going to run it and make sure that everything works the same. And here it's asking me for my name, and it printed my name. So that works out well. Okay, what else can we do? Well, let's see. Another way we could do this is, let's do this. Let us return the string name here. So we're not going to run print name yet. What we'll do is this. We have to return something, and so I need to return a string. So this time I'm going to return, because I said I was going to return something, a string, which in this case is name. Okay? But here's a problem. Now that I'm returning a value, when I call getName, I need to capture that value that was returned. So I need to make sure I set up a capital string. Let's just give it a different name, equals. Okay, so now what's happening is I've created a username. When getName runs, it'll ask my user for their name. It'll put that string into this variable that I set up, and it'll return that variable back into this string. So now username has a value that I got from the console. And so this time we can call print name, P-R-I-N-T, name, and we can send it. We have to send it a string. Well, we have a string, and now we'll send it the string that we got from the user. So that should also work in the same way. So we could make sure that all works, and and everything is doing the same thing. So different ways to do the same thing, but now we're seeing examples of returning nothing, returning a string, receiving no data, or receiving variables. Okay? Let's see, how about if we print something else? Let's get their user's age. So public static, we're going to return an int, get age. Okay, and I can just copy this data. We'll just make the changes so I don't have to make typos. So this time we're going to system out what is your age, and we're going to get their age, which is not a string, it's going to be an int, and we'll do next int and return age. Okay, so now we are doing exactly the same thing we did above with getName, but now we're getting the age and we're returning an int. And so let's set up the same scenario here where we're going to, let's see, we'll do it above here. We're going to do an int user USR age is equal to get age. Okay, and so now we have user age, and we also have from get age, and we also have get name. So let's add to our print name, or let's even do something new. Let's do public static void print age and name. And in this particular one, we're going to receive the string of the username. I'll just spell it that way. But I'm also going to receive, so I'm going to set up with a comma, a second piece of information, and that's the int age. Or you can USER, doesn't matter. Whatever you want to do. Okay. And so now I'm receiving two variables, and I might want to print out username plus age, concatenate with, it's not going to be username, yep, and then user age. So I need to make sure I match those variables. Okay, so I've matched this variable with this variable, those are the same. I've matched this variable with this variable, so that's the same. So it now will print out the information that I received. And let's see, so we've got username, we've got user age, but instead of, so now we just need to print it out. So instead of printing just the name, now we can, we'll just comment this one out, or we can run it, but let's now call print age and name. So I'm going to type in print age and name. And remember, it requires two pieces of information. It requires username, comma, and user age, which I got from these two inputs above here. So I received the information, I got the information, I put them into variables, and I'm sending that variable data into my method, which should then print out the username and the user age. So let's see that work. My system is running. What is your name? It is Kirsten. What is my age? I'm going to say I'm 21 because that's safe. And it did in fact do exactly what I asked it to do. So Hopefully this gives you some good examples of different ways to utilize methods and why you would use methods.